Deb Borgen. In light of this week's disturbances at the G4S-run Oakwood Prison and the first ever walkout by barristers over cuts to the legal aid system, is the government right to now be privatising the probation service?
This bill comes into the House, I think I'm right, on Tuesday, early next week.
Well, the bill doesn't privatise the probation service. What the bill does is extends supervision to 45,000 people who will walk out of prison in the next 12 months, who will receive no supervision at all. They'll walk onto the streets with £46 in their pocket, and the majority of them will reoffend. It is a travesty of our justice system. All of those people, if you talk to them, say, as they approach their release date, I do not know what's going to happen to me. I don't know where I'm going to go. And to have a situation where those people are going to walk our streets unsupervised and unsupported, very likely to reoffend, is something we have to end. And the whole purpose of our reforms is to do something that the last government wanted to do, but could not bring itself to do and decided it could not afford to do, which is to provide mentoring and support to those people in a way that's not been done before to try and tackle what I regard as the biggest hole in our justice system.
And that increase in the service, as you described, will be done by the private sector.
It's going to be, what I'm trying to do is to bring together a mix of private, public and voluntary sector. I want the management skills of the private sector to operate the system in a way that's more efficient and less bureaucratic at the moment. I want the risk management skills of the public sector, the skills in monitoring the most serious, violent and dangerous offenders, and I want the mentoring skills that exist in some of the fine charities that exist in this city and this borough, who I think can bring to bear a dimension to the support provided to people who've been in prison that is not there to anything like the degree it could be at the moment.
You said it kind of stood in opposition to the proposals from the government.
I mean, look, when I'm not in Parliament and not on any questions, Chris and I get on quite well. But Chris is the Justice Secretary with least understanding of our justice system in my lifetime. I mean, the same...
Does it help to get on really well?
The same companies... The National Audit Office and independent bodies have said the way the government privatised our translation services was a disaster and wasted millions of pounds. We have had dead people being tagged and we've been invoiced for them by these private companies. The Olympic security was a disaster of all epic scales. We've had prisoners who should be transferred in G4S and Serco vans not turning up or turning up late, but us being invoiced. And we've got Oakwood, where Oakwood Prison, it's easier, according to Her Majesty's Inspector of Prisons, in that prison, to get drugs than to get soap. So you'll forgive me of when Chris Grayling's bright idea is that the most dangerous offenders who leave our custodial estate should be supervised by these sorts of private companies. You'll forgive me if I think that's not a very good idea. I think the probation service, who are professionalised, do a very, very difficult job. Often, the people they're supervising have got mental problems. They've never had a job before. There could be a real risk to their ex-partner. And probation officers have to balance the risk to public safety with making sure these people are rehabilitated. At the same time...
And that has to be done by public sector workers, does it?
No, I think if you want to pilot the use of private companies, let's pilot it. Let's see if it's possible to get a partnership between voluntary groups, between the private company and with the probation service, rather than the big bang approach that Chris... No other country in the world uses the private sector to do this.
Sadiq, it's already happening in Peterborough and it's working. No, and it is worth saying...
Apple and pears. I know we set it up. It's apple and pears, Chris.
It is worth saying that since I became Justice Secretary, I haven't given contracts to G4S and Serco. When you worked in transport in the last government, you gave 5 contracts to G4S and Serco.
Safety, though, Chris. This is public safety.
The contract on electronic tagging was issued by the Labour Party.
It, Chris. We now have evidence that it's not working. And what you should be doing is you should be telling them to shape up or ship them out. And as far as legal aid is concerned, Jonathan...
What do you think I've been doing for the last 6 months?
As a direct consequence of the policies that Chris is talking about...
There is...
Well, no, Patrick, before you do, there's a real danger with our legal aid changes that people who should be properly prosecuted, found guilty and be sent to prison won't be done so because they won't be properly resourced.
Right, that's not the question.
Those who are innocent will not be able to be acquitted.
You can, but just I absolutely want to hear what you want to say. But let just will you commit to what you're going to ask him?
Sadiq, 2 years ago, the Labour Party argued for cuts to criminal legal aid. Will you commit, if you win the general election, to reversing the legal aid cuts?
Chris, I've said we'll make savings to the legal aid budget. We've got to make savings, but I'm not saying what you do is you throw everything out: the bath, the kitchen, the sink, the tables, the chairs, everything. What you need to have
will you reverse
is
the
a justice system that works. Lawyers, judges, those who work in the system have offered savings because you're trying to get a cheap headline. You've refused to work with them. What you're going to see, Chris, is legal aid lawyers not becoming legal aid lawyers, and it'll be the same old people who can have mummy and daddy supporting them being barristers.
Let me bring in the very patient Patrick O'Flynn, who wants to step between you, he claims.
Thank you. And what I've got to say may surprise people, because often UKIP is portrayed as being to the right of the Conservative Party on everything. And I say we're not. We're in the common sense centre of British politics. And when there are issues, well, listen to what I'm saying. When there are issues such as, I hear Chris use the term private sector management skills, and Sadiq points out the Olympic security farce which had to be solved by a public sector institution, namely the British Army. And let's not forget the banking crash which caused such a terrible effect on living standards throughout this country, that private sector management skills had a very major role to play in that as well. And also, when you have the state in charge of people's liberty, and you have the Queen's insignia on certain institutions, to me, that means something, and I'm very wary about farming everything out to basically a very few big private sector providers who make enormous profits from taxpayers' money. If Chris is talking about using the charitable sector a bit and innovative ideas and all that, then that's all well and good. But I am suspicious and sceptical of this idea about privatising branches of public service to do with the criminal justice system.
Deb Morgan, you put the question. What is your own view?
Well, I've worked as a probation officer in London for over 27 years, and my view, and that of NAPO, National Association of Probation Officers, is that if the bill goes through on Tuesday, it means that 70% of the high-performing probation service will be sold off, and it will lead to a fragmented criminal justice system and will not be able to protect the public as effectively as it currently does.
Quick response on that, Chris Grayling.
Well, I'd be astonished if the view of NAPO, the Probation Officers Union, was otherwise. But fundamentally, this change is about righting a terrible wrong, which is that those 45,000 people, many of them from dysfunctional backgrounds, young people who've not had proper parenting support as they grew up, not had adequate support in early adult life, will walk out of prison onto the streets of this capital and elsewhere with £46 in their pocket and nothing else. Will get no support at all.
Come in again, yes, you can, Deb.
It's actually factually wrong.
Correct.
Thank you. The original impetus for reforming and restructuring the probation service was this high rate of the people sentenced to under 12 months, they're reoffending. Can I please make it clear that the probation service has no statutory responsibility to supervise those people, and we would welcome the opportunity to do so. And to get this bill through on this lie is morally wrong and factually incorrect.
And also, Jonathan.
I'm going to go Chris Grayling, and then I'll bring you in. Sorry. Chris Grayling.
I'm afraid that's not right. It is certainly the case. It is certainly the case that 45,000 people leave prison every year with £46 in their pocket and nothing else. They receive no current support. The last government looked at whether it could provide that support, and in 2010 said we can't afford to do so. I found a way which I believe will allow us to do that. I think it's really necessary. There are people who will be victims of crime otherwise who will not be, because these people are supervised.
But Chris, you make it as if NAPO would say that, wouldn't they? But it's not just NAPO, is it? You've got chief executives and chairs of probation trusts who will warn you about the risk to public safety. You have former Lord Chief Justices, you have former probation inspectors and the current probation inspector. You've got select committees all warning you, please be careful. If you want to try the private sector, as Patrick said, if you want to try charities, you want to try voluntary groups, don't go for the big bang. Work with these skilled probation officers to see if we can have a system that works, saves money, addresses rehabilitation, and keeps the public safe. Why are you in such a rush to get to the next job so quick?
Veronica Fulton. Alistair Campbell famously said, "We don't do God." Do members of the panel do God?
Chris Grayling.
Well, the answer to your question is yes, but I think there's a broader issue here, that we're a multi-faith country. we draw strength from being a multi-faith country. We find some really important values to be found across the different faith communities. What we must also not forget, though, is that we are also fundamentally and originally a Christian country. And in embracing the faiths that we now have in this country, we should not do so at the expense of the Christian faith, and we should not allow a politically correct doctrine to say, in order to try and embrace other faiths, we somehow have to shove Christianity to one side. I think we've got to be very careful.
Just to say, Chris, you'll be pleased that the European Court found that, the human rights meant that British people wearing the cross could do so thanks to human rights legislation. So there you go. Human rights supports your faith.
I was about to say that we end this programme with philosophy and theology, the purpose of the Heathrop College, but we ended it with philosophy, theology of a kind, plus politics. As you might expect. Next week, we're going to be at the Greenbank High School in Southport with Anna Soubry, the Defence Minister, the Shadow Health Secretary, Andy Burnham, Christine Taken, who's a supermarket ombudswoman, and the businessman, Tony Caldera. Join us there, but from the Heathrop College. Goodbye.
Any Questions from Heathrop College in London was chaired by Jonathan Dimbleby. The producer was Lisa Jenkinson.